The message arrived on a Tuesday. Nothing special about that Tuesday, just an ordinary day when humanity discovered we weren't alone in the universe. The transmission cut through every radio frequency, television channel, and digital screen worldwide. Surrender your planet or face extinction. Typical alien greeting. I suppose that I was working my shift at the Global Defense Initiative control room when it happened. Just a regular technician, monitoring systems that had never seen real action. Lieutenant Chen was beside me, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips as the alien message repeated itself in 37 different languages. "They've been watching us," she whispered. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Admiral Rodriguez stormed in minutes later, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he surveyed the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "everything we've trained for starts now." That was 3 weeks ago. What the aliens couldn't have known, what no species could have predicted, was humanity's response. Not fear, though there was plenty of that. Not surrender, though many suggested it. Instead, what rose from the ashes of our shattered peace was something uniquely human: defiance. For 50 years, the world's governments had been preparing in secret. The space programs, international competitions, and even the trivial social media disputes, all carefully orchestrated distractions from what was happening beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. Project Thunderchild, Earth's first and only interstellar battleship. It wasn't supposed to launch for another decade, Dr. Patel explained during the emergency briefing. Her eyes reflected the holographic display of the massive vessel. But it's our only chance. The hull's quantum armor is untested, the dark matter engines are experimental at best, and half the weapons systems are theoretical. Commander Jackson, the chosen captain, just smiled. So was splitting the atom once. The next 14 days were a blur of preparations. Nations that had been enemies for centuries pooled resources. Scientists worked around the clock, engineers performed miracles, and somehow, impossibly, we finished what should have taken years in mere days. That I still remember the launch night. 10,000 people gathered at the secret base as Thunderchild rose from its cradle of ice and steam, a behemoth of human ingenuity stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly shimmer, the quantum armor adapting to atmospheric conditions. When it broke through the clouds, a cheer erupted that seemed to shake the very earth that I wasn't supposed to be on board. My technical expertise was deemed non-essential for the maiden voyage. But Commander Jackson had other ideas. "You built the communication array," she told me, handing over crew credentials. "If it breaks, I need someone who can fix it." That's how I found myself on humanity's first and possibly last hope, surrounded by the best Earth had to offer. 400 crew members from 72 countries, each an expert in their field. Engineers, scientists, tactical officers, and medical personnel, all united under a single mission. Show these aliens that humanity doesn't surrender. We didn't know what waited beyond our solar system. The alien fleet had stationed itself just past Mars, a collection of vessels that made Thunderchild look like a rowboat beside cruise ships. Their technology was clearly superior, their numbers overwhelming. Intelligence suggested they'd conquered 17 other civilizations before turning their attention to Earth. What we had was desperation, ingenuity, and one critical advantage they couldn't possibly understand: we had nothing to lose. Our first encounter came sooner than expected. 3 days into our journey, as we approached the Martian orbit, 5 alien scout ships moved to intercept. They were sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to flow rather than fly through space. "Open a channel," Commander Jackson ordered, standing tall on the bridge as the view screen flickered to life. The alien that appeared wasn't what anyone expected. Not the grotesque monster of science fiction, but something almost beautiful, crystalline structures forming what resembled a face, pulsing with internal light. "Your resistance is noted," it communicated, the words appearing as text since the creature had no mouth. And surprising, no species has ever responded with military action. "You will be studied thoroughly before extermination." Commander Jackson didn't flinch. "We're not here to be studied. We're here to negotiate, or demonstrate what happens when you threaten Earth." The alien's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amusement. "Negotiate? Your vessel, while impressive for such a primitive species, possesses no threat to our armada. That's when Jackson gave the order that would change everything: activate the Prometheus Protocol. No one knew exactly what the Prometheus Protocol was, a closely guarded secret developed by a coalition of quantum physicists. As Lieutenant Chen initiated the sequence, Thunderchild's hull began to shimmer more intensely, and something impossible happened. The alien vessels stopped moving. Then, slowly, they began to crack, fracture lines spreading across their hulls like ice breaking on a spring lake. The alien commander's image flickered, its crystalline features contorting. What have you done? The last thing we saw before the transmission cut was genuine fear in those alien eyes, fear of humans. And that was just the beginning. Silence gripped the bridge as we watched the alien scout ships disintegrate into glittering dust. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. The vastness of space seemed to swallow the moment whole, preserving it in the vacuum between stars. Then chaos erupted. Cheers, tears, embraces. The bridge crew celebrated while I stood frozen at my station, fingers trembling over the communications array. We just destroyed 5 alien vessels without firing a conventional shot. It didn't seem possible. Don't celebrate yet, Commander Jackson's voice cut through the noise. We've just announced ourselves. They'll be coming in force now. Dr. Patel approached the command chair, her tablet displaying scrolling data. The Prometheus Protocol exceeded all theoretical parameters. It generated a localized quantum field that disrupted the molecular bonds in their hull material. She paused, looking troubled. But the power drain was immense. We can't use it again without a full core recharge. How long? Jackson asked. 72 hours, minimum. Lieutenant Chen's voice rose from the tactical station. Multiple contacts approaching. Looks like the entire fleet is mobilizing. I watched the main view screen as countless pinpoints of light began to move towards our position. The enormity of what we'd done, and what was coming, finally hit me. We'd bloodied their nose, but the real fight was just beginning. Jackson stood, addressing the entire bridge. This was always the plan. Get their attention, make them angry, make them reckless. Now we run. That's how Earth's first interstellar battleship earned another distinction, becoming the first human vessel to activate a faster-than-light drive within our solar system. The theoretical risks were substantial: gravitational distortions, time dilation effects, potential hull breaches. But with an alien armada bearing down on us, theory took a back seat to survival. I'll never forget the sensation when the FTL drive engaged. Reality seemed to stretch around us, stars smearing into lines as Thunderchild tore through the fabric of space. My stomach lurched, my vision blurred, and for a heartbeat that felt eternal, I was everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, suddenly, stability. We emerged in deep space, far from Earth, far from the alien fleet. According to navigation, we traveled 17 light-years in under 3 minutes. Status report, Jackson demanded, looking remarkably unfazed by the jump. Damage reports flooded in. Minor systems failures, power fluctuations, 2 crew members with broken bones from the sudden acceleration. Nothing catastrophic. The aliens? She asked. Lieutenant Chen checked her instruments. No pursuit detected. Either they can't track our FTL signature, or they don't want to follow us, Jackson finished. Interesting. The next 48 hours became a crash course in interstellar warfare strategy. While Thunderchild systems recovered and the Prometheus Protocol recharged, Jackson gathered the senior staff to analyze what we'd learned and plan our next move. They didn't expect resistance, Dr. Patel explained during one briefing, displaying holographic models of the destroyed alien vessels. Their technology is advanced, but their tactics were sloppy. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive countermeasures. They've never needed them, Chief Engineer Takahashi added. He was a quiet man, rarely speaking except when he had something important to say. 17 conquered civilizations, all without meaningful opposition. They've grown complacent. Jackson nodded. And complacency gets you killed. What we didn't understand was why they targeted Earth at all. What did our small blue planet have that warranted conquest? The answer came from an unexpected source, the ship's xenobiologist, Dr. Rivera. It's not about resources, she explained, pulling up images of Earth against the backdrop of other known habitable worlds. It's about frequency. Frequency? I asked, speaking up for perhaps the first time in these high-level meetings. The Dr. Rivera nodded. The electromagnetic frequency our planet naturally emits. It's unique, extremely rare actually. Based on the composition of those scout ships, I believe these aliens are silicon-based lifeforms. They would resonate with Earth's electromagnetic field. Literally. They want to feel our planet's vibrations, Lieutenant Chen said incredulously. More than that, Rivera continued. I think they need it. The crystalline structures we observed might be deteriorating without exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Earth is a recharging station for them. The revelation changed everything. We weren't just fighting for survival, we were fighting for our planet's unique essence, something that couldn't be replaced or rebuilt. As the Prometheus protocol recharged, a new plan formed. We wouldn't be running anymore. Thunderchild hadn't been built to flee. We need to take the fight to them, Jackson announced on the third day. Hit their fleet where they least expect it, gather intelligence on their homeworld, and find a weakness we can exploit. The ship's AI calculated potential targets, supply lines, communication hubs, anything that might disrupt the aliens' command structure. But one option stood out. A small outpost on a moon orbiting a gas giant in a nearby system. Intelligence suggested it served as a forward operating base for their expansion efforts. It'll be heavily defended, Lieutenant Chen warned. Jackson's expression hardened. But I want them to remember what happens when you threaten Earth. As Thunderchild's engines hummed back to life and coordinates were set for our second FTL jump, I realized something fundamental had changed among the crew. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Determination. Purpose. We were no longer just running from extinction. We were bringing the fight to the stars, and somewhere across the galaxy, aliens were about to learn why that should terrify them. The jump to the alien outpost took 7 minutes, longer than expected. Thunderchild emerged from FTL with a shudder that rattled through the hull, alarms blaring across every deck. Coolant leak in the engine room, reported Chief Takahashi over the comms. FTL stress fractures in sections 12 through 17. Nothing critical, but we need repairs before another jump. Commander Jackson acknowledged with a grim nod. We'd arrived damaged and vulnerable, not exactly the entrance we'd hoped for. But as the main view screen adjusted to our new surroundings, a collective gasp swept through the bridge. The gas giant loomed massive and violet-streaked before us, its atmosphere churning with storms larger than Earth itself. But it wasn't the planet that commanded our attention. It was what orbited the small, rocky moon. Ships. Hundreds of them. Not just scouts or patrol vessels, but what appeared to be an entire construction facility. Crystalline structures extended from the moon's surface like massive stalagmites, each one crackling with energy as alien vessels emerged, fully formed, from their tips. They're growing them, Dr. Rivera whispered, her eyes wide. Those aren't construction platforms. They're birthing chambers. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through our stunned silence. Stealth systems holding. They haven't detected us yet. She paused, checking her readings again. Wait, energy surged from the surface. Something big is powering up. Before Jackson could order evasive maneuvers, a blinding beam of emerald light erupted from the moon's surface, slicing through space directly towards us. I braced for impact, certain we'd been discovered, but the beam passed us by, continuing into deep space before disappearing. It's a communication array, I realized aloud, quickly analyzing the signal pattern. They're sending a message, and judging by the power behind it, sending it far. Jackson's eyes narrowed. To their homeworld? Farther, I said, my hands flying over my console. The signal's aimed at a sector we haven't mapped yet, well beyond their known territory. The implications hung heavy in the air. These weren't just conquerors. They were colonizers, preparing for something much larger than the invasion of Earth. New plan, Jackson announced, her voice steel. We need intelligence more than we need a quick victory. Chen maintained stealth. Rivera and Patel, I want everything you can learn about those birthing chambers. And you, she pointed at me, decode that transmission. The next 12 hours were the most intense of my life. While Thunderchild lurked in the shadow of one of the gas giant's smaller moons, we worked frantically to understand what we were witnessing. The Prometheus protocol continued recharging W at 63% capacity, not enough for a full-scale attack, but perhaps enough for a targeted strike. Dr. Rivera made the first breakthrough. They're not just silicon-based, she explained, displaying microscopic analysis of debris we'd collected from the destroyed scout ships. They're silicon quantum hybrids. Their crystalline structures exist partially in quantum superposition. English, Doctor, Jackson requested. They exist in multiple states simultaneously, Patel translated. That's why the Prometheus protocol worked so effectively. It forced quantum collapse, essentially making them choose a single state of existence. Can we weaponize this knowledge? Jackson asked. Patel and Rivera exchanged glances. Theoretically, Patel began, if we modified our standard weapons with quantum disruptors. I barely heard the rest of their conversation. My focus remained on the transmission, running it through every decryption algorithm in our database. The alien language was unlike anything we'd encountered, not based on mathematics or binary as many had theorized alien communication might be, but on quantum states. Each word existed as a probability rather than a certainty. Slowly, patterns emerged. Not a complete translation, but enough to understand the gist of their message. What I found chilled me to the bone. Commander, I interrupted, my voice barely steady. The transmission. It's not a status report or a request for instructions. I swallowed hard. It's a dinner bell. The bridge fell silent. Explain, Jackson ordered. I pulled up the partial translation on the main screen. They're signaling to others of their kind, not just their current civilization, but others scattered across galaxies we haven't even reached yet. They're announcing they've found a world with the perfect. I think flavor is the closest translation, and inviting others to join the feast. Earth is the meal, Chin said flatly. And we're the only ones who know it's being served, Jackson finished. That's when the alarms blared again, proximity warnings screaming across every console. We'd been so focused on the transmission that we'd missed the patrol ship approaching our position. Stealth systems or not, we'd been caught. Battle stations. Jackson's command sent the crew scrambling. Power to shields and weapons. The alien patrol ship, larger than the scouts we'd encountered but smaller than Thunderchild, launched what appeared to be crystalline torpedoes toward our position. Our point defense systems fired automatically, detonating most mid-flight, but one slipped through, striking our starboard side. The impact sent me sprawling across the deck. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the affected sectors as warning lights flashed red across damage control displays. Return fire, Jackson ordered. Our conventional weapons, railguns accelerating tungsten slugs to relativistic speeds, should have torn through the alien vessel. Instead, the projectiles seemed to phase partially through it, causing minimal damage. Quantum shifting, Patel shouted over the alarms. They're partially phasing out of our reality to avoid impacts. Chen's eyes widened. They're calling for reinforcements, she warned, monitoring communications. We've got maybe 3 minutes before we're surrounded. Jackson's face showed no fear, only cold calculation. Status of the Prometheus protocol? 67%, Patel reported. Not enough for wide deployment. What about a focused burst? Jackson asked. Just enough to disrupt their quantum state? Patel hesitated. Theoretically possible, but it would drain the reserves completely. We'd have no defense against the reinforcements. Another impact rocked the ship. Fire suppression systems activated in 3 sections, and medical teams reported casualties throughout the affected decks. We were in trouble, and everyone knew it. That's when Chief Engineer Takahashi's voice came through on the command channel. I might have a solution, Commander. All eyes turned to the engineering feed on the main screen. Takahashi stood in the engine room, surrounded by his team working frantically on what appeared to be modifications to our FTL drive. The aliens exist partially in quantum superposition, he explained. But what if we could force them fully into it? The opposite of the Prometheus protocol. You want to make them more quantum? Rivera asked incredulously. I want to push them completely out of our reality, Takahashi clarified. The FTL drive works by shifting us partially into another dimension. If we reverse the polarity and direct the field externally instead of internally, we could push them completely into the quantum realm, Patel finished, eyes widening. Brilliant and terrifying. Can you do it? Jackson demanded. Takahashi nodded. 5 minutes. Maybe less. You have too, Jackson replied as another impact shook the ship. Everyone else, hold on. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. On the view screen, we watched as not 1 but 7 alien vessels converged on our position, their crystalline structures pulsing with energy, weapons charging. The moon base behind them had gone into high alert, more ships emerging from the berthing chambers that we were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Earth's fate hung in the balance, dependent on an untested modification to an already experimental drive system, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the dinner bell was still ringing, calling more hungry mouths to feast on our home. The question wasn't if we would survive the next few minutes. The question was, would Earth? 2 minutes stretched like eternity. The alien vessels surrounded us in a crystalline net, their weapons charged and pulsing with that eerie green light. In the engine room, Takahashi's team worked frantically on the FTL modifications while damage reports flooded in from all decks. 90 seconds until they're in optimal firing range, Lieutenant Chin reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Commander Jackson stood, addressing the bridge crew. Prepare for emergency power redistribution. When Takahashi gives the signal, I want everything we have diverted to his modified drive. Dr. Rivera approached the command chair, her expression troubled. Commander, I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from these ships. There's something odd about the pattern. We're about to be atomized by crystalline aliens, Doctor. Define odd, Jackson replied. Rivera pulled up a holographic display. These aren't just random quantum fluctuations. They're organized, almost like... The ship rocked violently as a glancing hit from one of the alien vessels struck our port side. Sparks erupted from a nearby console, and emergency lighting kicked in as primary systems temporarily faltered. 50 seconds? Chin called out. Rivera's eyes suddenly widened. Wait, these signatures. They're not just communication patterns. They're thoughts. Actual neural patterns. You're saying they think in quantum states? I asked, momentarily distracted from my station. No, Rivera breathed. I'm saying they're not the pilots. They're the ships. The revelation hit the bridge like a physical force. The crystalline entities weren't building vessels. They were reproducing. Each ship was a living being, born from the moon's surface facilities. Before anyone could process this information, Chief Takahashi's voice broke through on the comm channel. Modifications complete, Commander. But there's a problem. Jackson's jaw tightened. What problem? The reversed field will work, but someone needs to manually calibrate it from the drive chamber. The radiation levels. He paused. It's a one-way trip. Silence fell across the bridge. The drive chamber was the heart of the FTL system, and radiation shielding would have to be disabled to direct the quantum field externally. Whoever went in wouldn't come out. I'll do it, Takahashi said simply. No, Jackson countered. You're needed to manage the drive systems afterward. 30 seconds to optimal firing range, Chin interrupted. A new voice spoke up, Lieutenant Ortiz from Navigation. I can do it, Commander. My family died when the aliens first attacked Barcelona. Let me finish what they started. Jackson hesitated only briefly before nodding. Go. As Ortiz sprinted toward the drive chamber, I continued working on the alien transmission. Something about the quantum neural patterns Rivera had identified nagged at me. If they were living beings communicating in quantum states, perhaps, I think I can disrupt their coordination, I said suddenly, fingers flying across my console. If we broadcast a countersignal on the same quantum frequency, we might be able to confuse them just long enough for Ortiz to activate the drive. Do it, Jackson ordered without hesitation. I reconfigured our communication array, using the partial translation I developed to create what amounted to quantum static. As the signal went out, the effect was immediate. The approaching ships faltered, their perfect formation breaking as they struggled to maintain cohesion. 20 seconds, Chin announced. On the engineering deck, Lieutenant Ortiz had reached the drive chamber. We watched on the monitor as he entered the final calibration sequence, his movements calm and deliberate despite knowing what would happen when he activated the system. "Drive ready," he reported. "Awaiting your command." 10 seconds to optimal firing range, Chin warned. Jackson took a deep breath. "Lieutenant Ortiz, you have the gratitude of Earth. Activate the drive." "For Barcelona," Ortiz said quietly, and pressed the activation sequence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a blinding white light erupted from Thunderchild's engine section, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. As it touched the alien vessels, something extraordinary occurred. They didn't explode or disintegrate. Instead, they began to shimmer, becoming increasingly transparent until they simply vanished. But something went wrong. The quantum field continued expanding beyond our expectations, heading toward the moon base. The entire facility began to shimmer just as the ships had. "It's too powerful," Patel shouted. "The field is growing exponentially." The readings on my console spiked wildly. The quantum disruption was cascading, feeding back on itself and growing stronger with each alien entity it encountered. The moon base, the birthing chambers, everything was phasing out of our reality. Then came the twist no one could have predicted. As the last of the alien structures disappeared, my communications array detected a new signal, coming from within the quantum realm itself. It wasn't alien. It was human. "This is Admiral Catherine Zhao of the Earth Defense Fleet," the impossible message stated. "Thunderchild, do you read me?" Stunned silence fell across the bridge. Admiral Zhao had led Earth's first Mars colony 20 years ago. Her ship disappeared during a routine supply mission, all hands presumed lost. "This is Commander Jackson of the Thunderchild," Jackson finally responded. "Admiral Zhao, you're alive?" "Barely," came the reply. "And not for much longer. Listen carefully, we don't have much time. When you pushed those entities into the quantum realm, you opened a temporary doorway. We've been trapped here for years, studying them." "Who's we?" Jackson asked. "The missing ships," Zhao explained. "The Odyssey, Galileo, Magellan, all the vessels reported lost in deep space over the last 40 years. We're here, Jackson. Dozens of Earth ships caught in the quantum bubble these crystalline entities created. The implications were staggering. Our space program's greatest mysteries, ships that had vanished without explanation, had been victims of these same aliens. "Can we get you out?" Jackson asked. "No time," Zhao replied, her transmission becoming staticky. "The doorway is closing. But you need to know, Earth isn't their only target. These beings are scouts for something much larger. They call it the Harvester." "What's the Harvester?" Jackson demanded. "A quantum entity the size of a small moon," Zhao explained, her voice breaking up. "It consumes planetary electromagnetic fields. Earth is just the appetizer. Once they've taken our world, they'll use that energy to awaken the Harvester, and then no world will be safe." The transmission began to fade, quantum interference increasing as the doorway closed. "Admiral, how do we stop it?" Jackson asked urgently. "There's a weakness," Zhao's voice came through in fragments now. "The Harvester requires synchronized quantum, cannot function if opposite frequencies, the Jupiter station." And then she was gone, the quantum doorway closed, taking with it our only link to dozens of lost Earth ships and crews. "What was that about Jupiter station?" Dr. Rivera asked, breaking the stunned silence. Jackson turned to me. "Did you get any of that transmission recorded?" I nodded, already running the fragmented message through enhancement algorithms. "Parts of it. Something about synchronized quantum states and Jupiter station." "The Jupiter Deep Space Research Facility," Patel said suddenly. "It was decommissioned 10 years ago, but it housed the prototype for the Prometheus protocol." Chen's console beeped an alarm. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of Earth. The alien fleet is mobilizing, all of them. The main view screen shifted to show a tactical display of our solar system. The alien fleet that had been positioned near Mars was now moving, not toward us as expected, but directly toward Jupiter. They know, Jackson whispered. Somehow they know about Jupiter Station. Thunderchild hovered at the edge of an impossible precipice. Behind us, the quantum doorway had closed, taking with it Admiral Zhao and the crews of Earth's lost ships. Ahead lay Jupiter and a decommissioned station that apparently held the key to stopping the Harvester. And between us and home, an alien armada racing toward the same destination. Takahashi, Jackson called over the comms, status of our FTL drive. The modifications fried most of the primary systems, he responded grimly. We can manage one more jump, barely. But I can't guarantee where we'll end up. Jackson looked around. The bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes in turn. The unspoken question hung in the air. Make a desperate jump to Jupiter and potentially arrive in pieces, or take the long way home and certainly arrive too late. Plot a course for Jupiter Station, she ordered. All hands, prepare for emergency FTL jump. As Thunderchild's damaged systems powered up for what might be our final journey, I couldn't help but wonder what waited for us at Jupiter, and whether Earth's last hope was already lost. The FTL jump was nothing like before. No smooth transition, no controlled shift between points in space. This was violent, chaotic, a desperate lunge through the fabric of reality with damaged systems and failing containment fields that I was thrown against my console as Thunderchild shuddered and screamed around us. Emergency bulkheads slammed down throughout the ship, sealing off sections where hull integrity was compromised. Warning alarms blared from every system, and for several terrifying moments, I was certain we wouldn't survive. Then, abruptly, the chaos stopped. We emerged into normal space, the sudden silence almost as disorienting as the noise had been. Status report, Jackson demanded, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. We're alive, Chen replied, sounding surprised by this fact. Somehow. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, life support at 60% capacity, weapons systems offline. Patel checked her instruments. FTL drive is completely fried. We won't be jumping again, not without months in a proper space dock. Did we make it? Jackson asked, turning to navigation. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the massive gas giant Jupiter looming before us, its swirling storms and banded clouds hauntingly beautiful. And there, orbiting just beyond the radiation belt, was Jupiter Station, a skeletal structure of interconnected modules that had once been humanity's furthest permanent outpost. We made it, I confirmed. But we're not alone. The tactical display showed 3 alien vessels already in orbit around the station. Our arrival hadn't gone unnoticed, they were breaking orbit, moving to intercept. Weapons? Jackson asked. Still offline, Chen reported grimly. We have minimal point defense systems, but nothing that can damage those ships. Jackson's expression hardened. Then we do this the hard way. Prepare boarding teams. If we can't destroy them from a distance, we'll take that station deck by deck. Dr. Rivera stepped forward. Commander, if I may, the quantum neural patterns I discovered might give us another option. If these vessels are living entities, perhaps we can communicate with them directly, without translation. You want to talk to them? Chen asked incredulously. After everything they've done? Not exactly, Rivera clarified. I want to confuse them. If we broadcast contradictory quantum patterns, essentially create quantum noise, we might be able to disorient them long enough to reach the station. Jackson considered only briefly before nodding. Do it. But boarding teams prepare regardless. We're taking that station one way or another. As Rivera worked with my communications array to generate the quantum interference pattern, the rest of the bridge crew prepared for what might be our final mission. The alien vessels moved with purpose, their crystalline structures gleaming against the backdrop of Jupiter's clouds. Signal ready, Rivera announced. Broadcasting now. The effect was immediate and unexpected. Rather than simply disorienting the approaching alien ships, the quantum noise seemed to cause them physical pain. They lurched in space, their smooth movements becoming erratic, their formations breaking apart. "It's working better than we anticipated," Rivera said, surprised. "The quantum interference is disrupting their neural cohesion." "Take us in," Jackson ordered. Full speed toward the station. Boarding teams to the shuttles. Thunderchild's engines strained as we accelerated toward Jupiter Station, the damaged battleship pushing beyond safety parameters in a final desperate charge. Behind us, the alien vessels struggled to reorient themselves, their coordination shattered by our quantum broadcast. "We have a new problem," Chin reported suddenly. "Massive energy signature detected entering the system. It's bigger than anything we've encountered." The tactical display shifted, showing a new contact emerging from what appeared to be a quantum distortion at the edge of Jupiter's orbit. It dwarfed everything else, a crystalline structure the size of a small moon, pulsing with internal light. "The Harvester," Jackson whispered. There was no time to marvel at the impossible entity approaching us. Thunderchild reached the station, maneuvering alongside one of the docking ports with precision that belied our damaged state. "Boarding teams away," Chen confirmed as the shuttles launched, carrying 50 of our best crew members armed with modified weapons based on Patel's quantum disruption theories. Jackson turned to me. "Find everything you can about this station and what Admiral Zhao was trying to tell us. The answer is here somewhere." I accessed the station systems remotely, searching through decades-old files for anything related to quantum physics or the Prometheus protocol. What I found stunned me. "Commander, the Jupiter station wasn't decommissioned because of budget cuts like the official story claimed. It was shut down because of what they discovered here." I pulled up the classified files. They were experimenting with quantum entanglement on a massive scale, trying to create an instantaneous communication network throughout the solar system. "What went wrong?" Jackson asked. "They accidentally created a quantum beacon. It was broadcasting into, well, they called it adjacent realities. The scientists theorized it might attract attention from other dimensions." I looked up from my console. "They shut it down and buried the research, but not before something noticed us." "The crystalline entities," Rivera concluded. "But why would Zhao think this could help us?" Jackson pressed. Patel, who had been reviewing the technical schematics, suddenly straightened. "Because they also created a quantum dampening field, designed to cut off the beacon if anything responded to it. It was never activated." The pieces fell into place. That's what Zhao meant about opposite frequencies. The station has a built-in defense system specifically designed to disrupt quantum-based entities. On the tactical display, we watched as the boarding teams fought their way through the station, encountering scattered resistance from crystalline growths that had infested parts of the facility. Meanwhile, the Harvester continued its approach, its massive form now visible even to the naked eye through the viewports. "How do we activate this dampening field?" Jackson demanded. "It requires a full station restart," Patel explained. "The quantum reactor has been in cold shutdown for a decade. Someone would need to manually initiate the startup sequence from the central core." "And let me guess," Jackson said grimly, "the core is flooded with radiation." Patel nodded. "Gamma radiation from the reactor decay. Lethal exposure within minutes. Another sacrifice. Just like Ortiz. Just like the countless Earth ships lost to these entities over the decades." Jackson stood. "I'll do it." "Commander," Chen began to protest. "This isn't open for discussion, Lieutenant," Jackson cut her off. "I need everyone else here to keep this ship functioning and help our boarding teams. Once the dampening field is active, you'll need to modify it to affect the Harvester." "That's an order." No one argued further. We all understood what was at stake that I watched on the monitors as Commander Jackson made her way through the station, guided by Patel's instructions through areas already secured by our boarding teams. The Harvester was less than 20 minutes away now, its approach causing quantum disturbances that interfered with our systems. "The alien vessels are regrouping," Chin reported. "They've adapted to our interference signal." Modify the frequency, Rivera suggested. Keep them disoriented as long as possible. As I worked to adjust our broadcast, Jackson reached the central core, a massive chamber dominated by a spherical quantum reactor that had once been the pride of Earth's scientific community. "I'm at the core," she reported. "Beginning startup sequence." On our screens, we watched as she moved methodically through the procedure, manually overriding safety protocols and bringing the long-dormant systems back online. Radiation warnings flashed across her suit's displays, but she ignored them, focused entirely on her task. "Reactor at 30%, she reported, her voice steady despite what she must have known was happening to her body. "The dampening field needs at least 80% to affect the harvester." The minutes crawled by in agonizing slowness. On the tactical display, the harvester loomed ever closer, now clearly visible through Jupiter's upper atmosphere. Our boarding teams had secured nearly 70% of the station but were encountering heavier resistance near the communication nodes, almost as if the crystalline entities knew what we were attempting. "Reactor at 60%, Jackson updated. "Radiation shielding failing. I'm rerouting auxiliary power." Her voice was weaker now, the effects of radiation poisoning beginning to take hold. But her hands remained steady as she worked the controls. "Reactor at 75%, she continued. "Almost there." Chen's console suddenly lit up with alerts. "The harvester is accelerating. It's as if it knows what we're doing." "Boarding teams report heavy resistance at all communication nodes," another officer reported. "They're being pushed back." Jackson's voice came through again, now barely above a whisper. "Reactor at 85%. Dampening field online. Activating now." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a wave of invisible energy pulsed outward from the station. As it reached the alien vessels, they froze in space, their crystalline structures darkening as if suddenly drained of power, but the harvester continued its approach, apparently unaffected. "It's not working on the harvester," Patel exclaimed. "The field isn't strong enough." "Jackson, we need more power," I called out. "The field needs to be stronger to affect something that size." There was a pause, then Jackson's voice, now frighteningly weak. "There's one way. If I override the containment protocols and initiate a controlled quantum cascade, that would destroy the station," Patel protested. "And create a dampening pulse thousands of times stronger than what we're currently generating," Jackson finished. "Enough to affect even the harvester." The implications were clear. Not just radiation exposure, but certain death. "Commander, there has to be another way," I said. "There isn't," she replied simply. "And we all know it. Get Thunderchild to a safe distance." "That's an order." Chen looked at me, then at Patel and Rivera. No one moved to comply. "We're not leaving you, Commander," Chen said firmly. "That wasn't a request, Lieutenant." "The boarding teams are cut off from the shuttles," Chen replied. "We can't leave. Not yet." It was a lie, and we all knew it. But it gave us an excuse to stay, to not abandon our commander to die alone. Jackson must have understood, because she didn't argue further. "Initiating quantum cascade in 30 seconds. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Tell Earth, tell them we didn't go quietly." Those 30 seconds were the longest of my life. On our screens, we watched as the harvester drew ever closer, its massive crystalline form now filling the viewport, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Cascade initiated," Jackson said, her final words calm and clear despite everything. "For Earth." The station erupted in a blinding flash of light. Not an explosion in the conventional sense, but a quantum event that transcended normal physics. The dampening pulse spread outward at impossible speed, a perfect sphere of energy that engulfed everything in its path. When it reached the harvester, something extraordinary happened. The massive entity didn't shatter or explode. Instead, it began to fold in on itself, collapsing into increasingly smaller dimensions as the quantum cascade forced it out of our reality entirely. The pulse continued outward, catching the remaining alien vessels and erasing them from existence. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Where the harvester had been, there was only empty space, set against the eternal storms of Jupiter. Jupiter Station was gone. Commander Jackson was gone. And in their place was victory. Though the cost had been almost too high to bear, we rescued our boarding teams, gathered what data we could, and began the long journey home. Thunderchild limped through space on impulse power alone, the FTL drive beyond repair. It would take months to reach Earth, but we would make it. We had to. Someone needed to tell the story of what happened here. Of Jackson's sacrifice. Of the threat that had been averted, or so we thought. 2 weeks into our journey home, as I was analyzing the final data from Jupiter Station, I discovered something troubling in the quantum readings. The cascade hadn't destroyed the harvester, not completely. It had forced most of it into another dimensional plane, yes. But tiny fragments had survived, quantum seeds scattered throughout our solar system, and they were growing. That I brought my findings to Lieutenant Chen, now acting commander of Thunderchild. She studied the data in silence for a long moment before looking up, her expression resolute. So we didn't win, she said. We just bought time. We did more than that, I replied. We proved they can be fought. We proved humanity doesn't surrender. Chin nodded slowly. Then we'd better make the most of the time we bought. She activated the ship-wide comm system. Attention all hands. Change of plans. We're not going home, not yet. As Thunderchild adjusted course toward one of the quantum fragments I'd detected, I felt something unexpected, hope. Jackson had shown us the way. Admiral Zhao and the Los. T-ships had given us the knowledge we needed. We had proven that Earth could fight back. The battle for our planet wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time since that Tuesday when the aliens first appeared, I believed we might actually win, and somewhere across the stars, I liked to think that other alien civilizations were beginning to feel something they'd never experienced before. Fear of humans. Earth's battleship had been unleashed. And we were just getting started. 6 months passed as Thunderchild pursued the quantum fragments throughout the solar system. Each one required a modified version of the dampening field, carefully calibrated to erase the alien presence without creating the catastrophic cascade effect that had destroyed Jupiter Station. It was painstaking work, dangerous and draining, but necessary. We lost more good people along the way. Lieutenant Reyes during the Venus operation. Engineer Kapoor when we tackled the fragment hiding in Saturn's rings. Each loss cut deep, each name added to the memorial wall that had begun with Commander Jackson and Lieutenant Ortiz. Chen led us with the same steady determination that had made Jackson choose her as second in command. She never wavered, never questioned our mission, even when supplies ran low and systems failed faster than we could repair them. Last one, she announced one morning as we approached the outer reaches of the Kuiper Belt. The final fragment had embedded itself in a comet, growing slowly in the cold darkness beyond Neptune. After this, we go home. The word held almost mythical status after so many months away. We'd had no direct contact with Earth since Jupiter Station, our communications limited to basic status updates transmitted through the relay network. We didn't know what awaited us there, whether other fragments had reached the planet, whether defense systems had been established using our transmitted data. We only knew our part of the mission: hunt down and destroy every last quantum seed we could find. The Kuiper Belt operation went more smoothly than expected. The fragment was younger than the others, less developed, easier to neutralize. As Thunderchild turned back toward the inner solar system, I sensed a collective exhale among the crew. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd completed our mission. The journey home took another 3 months. Thunderchild limped along on makeshift repairs and jury-rigged systems, every deck bearing the scars of our encounters. By the time Earth appeared on our view screens, a blue jewel against the blackness of space, our battleship was barely holding together. What we expected to find was devastation, or perhaps an ongoing battle. What greeted us instead was something entirely unexpected: a defense fleet. Dozens of ships, clearly based on Thunderchild's design but smaller, faster, more agile, moved in precise formation around our planet. Earth had been busy in our absence. Thunderchild, this is Earth Defense Command. came the transmission as we approached. "Welcome home." The voice belonged to Admiral Rodriguez, the same officer who had been in the control room that first day, who had overseen the final preparations for Thunderchild's launch. He sounded older, wearier, but the pride in his voice was unmistakable. "We've been monitoring your progress," he continued. "Your data transmissions helped us develop our own defenses. The fragments that reached Earth have been contained and neutralized." As we docked at the orbital station, I stood on the observation deck, watching the swirling clouds and blue oceans of the planet below. Earth looked unchanged, peaceful, but I knew better. Nothing would ever be the same again. The debriefing lasted weeks. Every mission, every encounter, every discovery was analyzed and catalogued. The quantum communication theories developed by Rivera became the foundation for a new early warning system. Patel's modified dampening field technology was standardized across the defense fleet. We had changed the course of human history, not just by surviving but by bringing back knowledge that would protect our species for generations to come. 1 month after our return, a memorial service was held for those we'd lost. Commander Jackson's name headed the list, her sacrifice acknowledged with Earth's highest honors. Family members of the crew spoke, sharing stories of their loved ones. Admiral Rodriguez unveiled a monument, a crystalline structure, ironically similar to our enemy, but representing humanity's resilience rather than alien threat. "They came expecting easy prey," he said during the ceremony. "They found warriors instead." Afterward, as the crowds dispersed, I found myself standing alone before the memorial. Chen joined me, her captain's insignia still new on her uniform. "They've asked me to lead the next mission," she said quietly. "Deep space. Seeking out the source of these entities. Thunderchild is being rebuilt, upgraded with everything we learned." I wasn't surprised. Earth wouldn't wait for the next attack. We'd take the fight to them, wherever they came from. "When do we leave?" I asked. Chen smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. 3 weeks. Volunteering already? Someone needs to keep the communications array running, I replied. Besides, I hear space is nice this time of year. We stood in companionable silence, watching as the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, casting golden light across the waves. Earth continued its eternal rotation, unaware of how close it had come to destruction, how much had been sacrificed to keep it safe. That night, before returning to my temporary quarters, I sent a message to my family. I told them I'd been offered a position on Earth, a comfortable desk job analyzing alien communication patterns. I told them I'd turned it down. Some might call it foolish to head back into danger after everything we'd survived. But standing on the edge of a new chapter in human history, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The stars had called to humanity for millennia, inspiring us to look upward, to dream, to explore. Now they called with a different purpose, to defend not just our world but potentially many others from a threat few understood. The crystalline entities had made a critical error when they targeted Earth. They'd assumed we were easy prey, a species to be harvested and forgotten. Instead, they'd awakened something that had always defined humanity at its best, our refusal to surrender, our determination to protect our home, our willingness to sacrifice for those who would come after us. Earth's battleship had been unleashed. And we were taking the fight to the stars. This wasn't the end of our story, it was just the beginning.